What the wife buys also becomes the husband's. If that's not acceptable, then let me know.
My husband, Charles, tries to take from me for unreasonable reasons. He even tries to give things that I bought for my parents to my in-laws to make himself look good.
But that's just...
When I tell him the truth, he turned. Before I married Charles, my grandparents left me a gift. It was real estate. When I thanked my grandparents and said I was going to use it to help my husband in the future, they both warned me to keep it a secret. Even if Charles was my own husband, to keep it a secret that I had income and that I had enough to live. I somewhat felt sorry for Charles, decided to follow my grandparents. My grandfather, who cared for me, passed away. And as I continued my married Charles, an incident occurred. One day, when I checked my savings account, I discovered that $1,000 had been withdrawn. This account was mainly managed by Charles, who created it to make ends meet for the expenses that he brought into this world. It's such a large sum of money, but memories of withdrawing it. This meant that the one who withdrew that amount was inevitably Charles. I immediately asked Charles about it, came home that day.
Hey, $10,000 are missing living expenses account. Do you have any idea about what happened to the missed money?
Yeah, I lent it to my mom. She was in some kind of trouble.
He answered easily, and it was clear that Charles had lent it to my mother.
And you didn't tell me anything about your new job?
It's okay. I earned it anyway. We had some savings. So it's okay. Amount won't hurt.
The account is for both of us. After...
If it was his own account that he had when he was single, it would have been easy to withdraw a large sum of money from the shared account without saying anything. When I sighed heavily at Charles' selfishness, he frowned and gave me a look that looked very irritated.
Okay. I'll tell you next time.
Charles dismisses it in a way that he was annoyed by it and quickly went to the bathroom. I didn't feel good at all at what had happened. He didn't behave like that when we married, and he used to listen to sincerely. Is this what changing is like in a relationship? A few days later, I had no choice but to go to my in-laws' house to pick up a package that had been sent to our home by mistake.
Oh, Megan, thanks for coming all the...
Why didn't you come in since you came all this way?
I had intended to leave them at the hotel, but I couldn't really refuse my parents-in-law, so I went to their room to have a cup of tea. As I did so, I noticed a variety of luxurious cosmetic products, glamorous clothes, health products.
Oh, my wonderful son gave them to me gift.
$10,000 were in the account, so it was only natural to spend it in such an obvious way. However, after learning that Lisa had borrowed money from Charles, he did not feel too good about the fact that it had been spent on her lavish lifestyle. As I sipped my tea, without any smile, my in-laws broke into their smiling faces at me with a frightened look on theirs, as though they were threatening me.
My son is such a nice, wonderful boy who gets gifts for me. But what about you?
That S, right? Are you serving me well as my wife?
There's something fishy going on.
I heard, he said that he gets blamed a lot for taking out the money to spend for himself.
I completely understand now. Charles had told my in-laws that he was the victim of something, which explained why they were looking at him with fear. I gradually grew tired of my in-laws' husband. I had never expected to be treated so horribly and neglected like this. And finally, I began to think about, I thought that if I divorced him, I would eventually return to my parents' house and rebuild it using the savings from the passive income. My parents' house is a 2-story house that was built before my brother was born. It's over 30 years old. The family of 5 used to live there. My brother and I have left home. It became too crowded. And even though a ramp and handrail my parents were partially installed their house, it was too spacious and difficult for my parents, who are not. This would mean that a cozy nester would be much better for them to live in. I immediately called my parents to tell them I was considering rebuilding their house. As a surprise, my parents were shocked by the divorce, but they were happy to hear about the idea of reconciling. I could tell that they were relieved.
I'm glad that you're planning to reel for us. Thank you.
Even if we won't be living there for won't be a problem, since you can, the house as it was built with your...
Well, then I'll start preparing bit by bit.
Take it easy, just don't overdo it.
My dad and mom's words restored my immediately. Then I started to rebuild my parents' house, and I was just waiting to hear from the construction company when Charles Smith confronted me.
How dare you use our savings to build a new house without telling me anything about it?
As soon as we sat down, facing each the living room table, Charles Starr banged his fist on the table while he continues to yell without regard. My feelings.
Well, they'll be living in the new house then.
No, that's impossible because it was for my parents to live in.
You rebuilt it with our common property. My parents have the right to live in peace.
Are you planning on cramming 4 people into that small one-story house?
Shut the hell up. Just give me the house then.
Charles screams as he hits the table. If I hadn't told him about the pass, he would have gotten even angrier when he found out. I decided to tell him the whole truth.
To be honest, I'm not really sure. I've actually been making savings from real estate that was gifted to me by my grandparents. I paid for it from that passive income, didn't take a penny out of our company property.
As I felt guilty for breaking with my grandparents, Charles, who was sitting in front of me, shook his head and began pounding the table.
What a bad wife you are, hiding that you have an income. You play around with my money and prove your own like that by keeping it a...
Seeing his face turn red with his anger rising, I thought I understood why my grandparents told me to keep my passive income a secret. Just maybe my grandparents had already figured out that Charles was that kind of person.
Listen, I won't take the house as alimony. Besides, the house you built, it's mine too. I am the head of the family, and if you disobey me, I will divorce you.
I felt nothing but dismay at my own insistence, and I was fed up with him. How could I have lived with such a man without knowing it? I had originally intended to use the income when we could no longer depend on Charles's income. If I am unable to work due to injury or illness, I hope that I can receive assistance in making ends meet. I was going to save it to show Charles and let him know when the time came, but now I have no desire to spend that him anymore.
Be my guest.
I got up from my seat and left. I didn't want to be near Charles. I decided to stay at a business hotel for the night, cool off, and return the next day. However, when I returned home the next morning, Charles was waiting for me with a disgusting smile on his face. He approached me with a smirk on his face, holding out a sheet of paper behind his back. It was divorce papers, and they were already filled out.
You're lying about your passive, aren't you? You lied about having passive income when in fact you were just taking money out of properties, didn't you?
My husband's argument is still that I couldn't understand him at all. As my part, I sincerely told him the truth, and I didn't lie at all.
It's true I have a passive income.
Here you go again. I know that you can't live without me.
Charles snickered and forced the divorce papers into my hand. And then he says,
You'll let me know when we can move. I'm gonna go out for a drink.
After saying that, he pat me on the and walked out humming in a good mood. Now, I knew exactly who Charles was. He had not changed, and he had just found out from me that he had been looking down on me since the beginning of our marriage. He had never once considered my feelings. I immediately packed my belongings, out the divorce papers on the spot, home. I decided to move in with my parents temporarily while the house was being built. I explained the situation to them, and we agreed that it would be best for us all to live together until the house was completed. The next day, I was dismayed to see phone's incoming call logs filled W. Charles number. Then, as if to follow up, I received a call from him. I pressed the call button and answered it, hoping that this would be the last conversation I would ever have with him.
Hello?
Hey, all your stuff is gone, you know?
My husband's impatient tone left me with nothing but questions. He was the one who had confronted me about my divorce. So why was he panicking when all I wanted to do was leave him?
What do you mean by, huh? We are getting a divorce. So I won't ever come back. So please us empty spaces as you please.
I wondered if he sensed something in my voice when I spoke to him. My husband was silent for a few minutes. Apparently, he now finally has passive income. Then, after a few moments of silence, in a very sweet voice I had never before,
Hey, can you tell me more about your new house? I don't care if I have to live with your parents. Please.
I told you before already that it's a one-story house.
Please. I said I'd surprise my parents with.
my husband's words left me speechless. What in the world was he thinking? Giving them a house that he didn't even buy? And to announce it as a surprise was reckless.
You don't really care about the savings, do you? You have no idea how much I worry about the money I'll give you for an allowance and the money I'll save on living expenses and how much I worry about it.
That has nothing to do with what's here.
You are just careless with money and only the hassle to other people and present to your parents as if you peer everything by yourself, right? When all of this has been prepared for my parents.
That's a great idea.
My husband suddenly clammed up and frustration only grew. It's so shallow of him to make it seem like he planned it himself and give his parents credit for something they didn't do. In the end, he was just trying to take advantage of my pure feelings and my property. There's no reason for him to go out of his way to trample on my feelings and intentions.
I will not give you the house I built with all my heart and soul just so you can show it off to your parents.
I rejected Charles' idea once and for all, and he began to rant extra loudly.
But husbands and wives are supposed each other. I'll tell them that you built it. Please.
We're not a married couple anymore.
Huh?
I'm saying that we are not strangers. We have already filed for divorce.
On the very day my husband, or rather ex-husband, handed me the divorce papers he had submitted to the city office. He had wanted a divorce so badly, but I was sorry for him if I didn't leave him as soon as possible. I was already in the process of filling out the paperwork when I decided to marry, my ex-husband said in a tone of disbelief.
You already filed it?
Why are you so surprised when you're who asked for the divorce?
I didn't think you would really mean it. Hey, let's start over. Let's talk it out and try to be grown-ups this time.
How can he say such a ridiculous thing? This is a man who spent our savings on his own mother, threatened me for a divorce, and made fun of me until the very end. There's no way in hell I would ever want to be with someone like him.
No, thank you. Please give my regards to your parent.
I said it brightly as I hung up his. The next day, I continued to receive voicemails and messages from Charles demanding that we get back together. He told me that we could still start, that he loved me, but I felt that he after my property and fortune. In order to completely cut ties with, immediately blocked all contact related to him and his parents. In the meantime, the house was rebuilt and I moved into our new home where we're living comfortably. Later, I had a chance to meet with a friend who also knew Charles and explained to her that Charles and I divorced. My friend gave me some words of sympathy, telling me what had happened to him and his family. Firstly, my ex-husband suddenly submitted a letter of resignation at his workplace, saying that he no longer needed to work. He said he had acquired real estate through the company and could get into touch with him. However, the next day, he apparently withdrew his resignation letter. His bosses, of course, lectured him. He suddenly disappeared without any notice. And what leaving only his resignation had caused, and that he didn't really realize how much trouble he had caused the surrounding employer. The company had asked what was wrong with him, but there was no way Charles could tell them the truth, that he was relying on his wife's income while he tried to lie about his situation. However, in the end, the company was able to determine why he had a divorce. He could no longer make up any lies, as the company had refused him rehire. Charles, who had mocked my past income by saying it was probably a lie, was now trying to take advantage of my current situation. As well as showing off to his parents, he bought me a house as a present, but he never mentioned anything about me or our future whatsoever. When I think about it, I no longer have feelings for my ex-husband. In fact, I feel refreshed. I heard that my ex-husband has returned to his parents' home, but his parents have been very hard on him because he is trying to find himself a new job. But he seems to be having a hard time in a new job because of the reasons why his last job. I can only say that he got what he. As for me, I live with my parents in a house that I built myself. I have a job that I always enjoyed doing, and I'm enjoying my life. I have been saving my passive income for Charles and our future. But now, I want to invest it in the future to support those who have been supporting me.